once again to the Imaginary Gallery. It is TJ, your host. Tonight's discussion is a viewer's question / discussion. I had a video up, Signs of a Bad Dating Choice. There was a comment posted by Karn, and I'll go ahead and read the question, then bring it into a discussion. Question was, would you agree that the detective work that not only seems necessary, but actually is necessary when dealing with a narcopath, bears more than a resemblance to stalking and is a boundary violation? I found that just as they obliterate our boundaries, I felt compelled to do the same in a number of ways as a form of defense. That gives them all the reason they need to cry abuse, of course. It seems as though, unless we have the good sense to get out early, which so very few do, the spiral of abuse and counter-abuse, or reactive abuse, as I've seen it called, is almost inevitable. My response that I gave, which I'll expand upon here, I told this person they've hit the nail smack dab on the head, and described the typical scenario that I've seen. The target is upfront, honest about who he or she is, how he or she feels about life in general, his opinions on various matters, major to minor in scale. And when such a target gets those gut feelings when they're involved with someone that they suspect may be toxic, normally the first thing that such a person would do would simply be to ask the person, hey, this seemed kind of fishy, and you look for explanations. Or you may even say, hey, that's not a very good thing to do. That could be abusive or something. When you do this type of thing and confront the creature, even if it's just to state you're uncomfortable with certain behavior or certain course of events, a lot of times you have a gut feeling that this person is too good to be true. They pretend to be perfect, but then pieces come out here and there that indicate that may not be the case. But again, each time you approach the person, it's usually invalidated by the narcissistic person. The person will simply tell you that you're mistaken. They'll give you an alternate explanation, which always seems to be possible. But when you're involved with this type of creature, it's possible, but it's very unlikely. So this narcopath pacifies the target. They'll claim nothing's wrong and nothing's going on, and they'll give flimsy excuses, and the target's gut feelings seem to persist or even get stronger. And I say that this means the target's basically being set up by this creature. Because the feeling becomes so strong at some points, like it did in my case with a few people, this feeling is screaming, monster, creature, evil. A lot of times we'll silence that thinking, oh, well, it could be anything. We talk ourselves out of it sometimes. But these feelings persist. So you'll go on and on sometimes about how, wait, I know this is wrong because this wouldn't have happened if that happened. And if you didn't feel this way, you wouldn't have done that, and so on, and none of that works. And you're subjected to the famous gaslighting these people loved. No validation comes from the person doing the horrible things. So what are you going to do? You'll probably pay closer attention to things. You might snoop. You might follow the person to work. You might check their message, look through their things. You might do any number of things which, if you think about it, would typically not be something you would do. Like Karn had said, it becomes a matter of self-defense. Like I've done in the counter-manipulation videos, mention it's a matter of protecting your self-respect. Eventually, the target will think to themselves about how, up to this point in their life, their intuition has always been pretty accurate. It's served them well, but strangely, when they're dealing with this one particular person, it's as if it's completely failed. It's completely worthless. It seems weird, like, oh my goodness, maybe I'm losing my abilities. No, you're not. You're dealing with a creature. Targets usually feel compelled to find out what really is going on, and a lot of times it really bothers them. So they end up feeling entitled themselves to overstep specific boundaries, like I had mentioned, following them, checking things that you normally wouldn't have any reason to even think of doing. This can appear like stalking. When the target actually finds something out, like discovers or uncovers a horrifying thing, this can be a double-edged sword because on one hand, the target achieves the validation, feel a little bit of relief thinking, oh, my intuition wasn't off after all. But then the other side of the sword blade is that you're dealing with a creature, a toxic person. And of course, your brain will probably go over the whole thing and realize that there are many other ways this could have been handled, and this is the way this person chose to do it. And those excuses this person gave, instead of being an adult and discussing it for real, oh, The other thing here is this can be your downfall because typically with the cluster B monsters, they've made friends with all your friends and turned them into flying monkeys in some cases. Plus they've got their own friends and they have a mask on at all times. So they're pretending to be Mr. or Mrs. Perfect and everybody is used to that. And if it's close friends of yours, for example, and you're still the open and honest person you always have been, eventually if you spy on the person and catch them doing this, or you spy on the person and don't catch anything, but you get caught spying, well then all of a sudden it goes to the others and say, oh my goodness, this person's flipped out. I caught him spying on me. Oh my. And then if they come to you and say, did you really spy on him or her? You're going to be honest and say, well, yes, I did. And you're going to look like the bad guy. Because remember, they've got their mask on. They're covert. So they're doing evil stuff and they're covering it up so you don't realize it's going on, but then you feel it's going on, and they have a way of thinking that if you don't see it happen, then it's not happening, but that's not the case. So you end up losing your credibility in a lot of cases with your own peers because they don't understand what's going on. They're not living there with you and the other person, seeing the day-by-day shenanigans that go on, plus the fact that you're overstepping your own boundaries, and it's not typical of you, but you'll start to look like the bad guy. Plus, it's a kind of like a challenge feeling. Like you feel you're being challenged when you know the answer, yet the other person insists that you're wrong, so you'll do more and more to try to prove your point, which in the process gives this narcissistic monster a whole list of things to tell others you've done that are abusive. And it sounds plausible. It sounds realistic because you really did do these things. But of course, you can't really explain the gut feeling to everybody else. You can tell them how you felt and what you did, but it doesn't always work when you're dealing with others. So you will end up looking like a stalker. This will validate the creature's claims when it tells others that you're losing it. You have to keep in mind when dealing with such a thing that none of this would be happening if you were working with another open and honest person. If the target was dealing with someone who is just as open as he or she is, then none of these things would be an issue. I did get a response from this answer. Karn had responded with, not only does the detective work and terrier-like persistence in confronting the narcopath give them grade A material to work with when it comes to the smear campaign, which is what I touched on a moment ago, it even is more dangerous when it comes to the target's own self-perception. At least this person thinks so. If you're a person with integrity, then although you're reacting appropriately to a very abnormal situation, the fact is that you're behaving in ways that cause you to question your own behavior, which I've discussed before. Am I the abuser or the abused is a video I did a long time ago. The fact is you're behaving in a way that gives you cause to question yourself and your own morals. You may begin to wonder if you're all that different from the narcopath, and you start to gaslight yourself. The consequences of that can be extremely detrimental and might affect you long after the narcopath has gone. And yes, this person says their intuitions had a long history of being pretty accurate. The person's very analytical, and there's cognitive dissonance. Ironically, I think that the more analytical you are, the worse you make things for yourself once you work so hard to resolve the conflicting evidence, if you don't yet realize that you are dealing with a pathological person. No one expects a pathological or knows what it looks like until you do deal with one, or has any idea that it's as prevalent as it is. We expect people to be different, but not that different. So I agree, it does feel like you're breaking your own rules. You're doing things you normally wouldn't. But as I've stated before, you're trying to preserve your own self-respect. Because remember, with these covert people, they're talking to you day and night, flattering you, love-bombing you, giving you all these things and attention. It's not like they run up to you and slap you in the face and run away. No, they infiltrate themselves into your life. These other things don't usually show up until a lot later. And then when you start to pick up on them, there's always an excuse or an answer, but after a while, if you keep persisting with questions, then you'll be labeled as paranoid. You'll be labeled as someone who's looking for a problem when there isn't one, and that can eat away at you because, remember, they're covert. So they're doing whatever they're doing behind your back, and then trying to make you feel like a fool for even thinking that something's wrong. And it can be very destructive and very dangerous. And we find ourselves going down roads we typically wouldn't. And sometimes we feel like, I don't like the person I become when I'm around this one because I feel like I have to check on it. I have to spy on it because I don't believe what it's saying. And typically that would just be a clue to leave. But these people are masters at this stuff. They usually have hooked themselves into your life in some way. They found something you like and they repeat that. And they know that if you start to pull away, they can easily throw back all the love bombing things they did. Keep in mind that you didn't ask for them to do them usually, but they'll throw that in your face and tell you how selfish you are. You're going to get mad over this one little thing, and like when they get caught, usually, like if you catch a flat-out lie and point it out to their face, because typically you can do that, and they'll still insist that whatever they said first is true. But it can be difficult, and we have a natural instinct to preserve ourselves, and because there's no target to look at as far as an abusive person, when they're right there smiling in your face, looking at you with a straight face, saying, I didn't do anything wrong at all. You've made that up in your mind. It's difficult to deal with, especially if you're 100% sure of what you came up with in your mind. And my response to that is, it's a common line I'll hear is, you made all that up in your head. And I'll say, nope. I figured it all out in my head, but I didn't make it up. It's not based on nothing. It's not a baseless claim. It's based on, and I could list 50 things that it's based on. And if the tables were turned and it was the narcopath who was observing another person doing these 50 things, you can believe and you can bet they would be questioning things too. But it doesn't apply to them because they're entitled. So I agree, it does feel like you're breaking your own rules. You're doing things you normally wouldn't. But as I've stated before, you're trying to preserve your own self-respect, because remember, with these covert people, it's not like they run up to you and slap you in the face and run away. No, they infiltrate themselves into your life. They're talking to you day and night, flattering you, love-bombing you, giving you all these things and attention. These other things don't usually show up until a lot later. And then when you start to pick up on them, there's always an excuse or an answer. After a while, if you keep persisting with questions, then you'll be labeled as paranoid. You'll be labeled as someone who's looking for a problem when there isn't one. And that can eat away at you because, remember, they're covert. So they're doing whatever they're doing behind your back and then trying to make you feel like a fool for even thinking that something's wrong. And it can be very destructive and very dangerous. And we find ourselves going down roads we typically wouldn't. And sometimes we feel like, I don't like the person I become when I'm around this one because I feel like I have to check on it. I have to spy on it because I don't believe what it's saying. And typically that would just be a clue to leave. But these people are masters at this stuff. They usually have hooked themselves into your life in some way. They found something you like and they repeat that. And they know that if you start to pull away, they can easily throw back all the love bombing things they did. Keep in mind that you didn't ask for them to do them, usually. But they'll throw that in your face and tell you how selfish you are. You're going to get mad over this one little thing. And like when they get caught, usually, like if you catch a flat-out lie and point it out to their face, because typically you can do that and they'll still insist that whatever they said first is true. We have a natural instinct to preserve ourselves. It's difficult to deal with, especially if you're 100% sure of what you came up with in your mind. It's a common line I'll hear is, you made all that up in your head. And I'll say, nope. I figured it all out in my head, but I didn't make it up. It's not a baseless claim. It's based on, and I could list 50 things that it's based on. And if the tables were turned and it was the narcopath who was observing another person doing these 50 things, you can bet they would be questioning things too. But it doesn't apply to them because they're entitled.
I am the Narcopath.
I don't know if you remember a first date. I made it a point to tell you that I didn't sleep around, that I was a one-man type of chick. Of course, through the afternoon at the beach, at least 10 guys came up and were pinching my bottom and telling me I looked sexy and hot, and you kept asking who they all were. Well, I used my standard lines. Oh, that's just a friend. Oh, I grew up with him. Oh, he always calls me Pussy Willow. Oh, he always squeezes my bottom. Get over it. And you kept talking about it because you thought you saw something in his eyes that indicated he and I had been together. And that is ridiculous, I told you. Drop it. Would you just drop it? Oh, I'm getting sick of this. I'm here with you. You did not need to know that he and I were together basically every night that you were busy. You did not need to know any of that. And if you would have minded your own business, we would have been fine. I don't know what it is with all you people thinking you have to find out the truth. It's none of your business. As long as you understand that, then we could be together forever. Just make sure you don't follow me.
And you need not remind me. I know when you found out about the other boys. and you kept asking, like you were looking for me to give you some kind of heartfelt confession or something. To tell you the truth, I got what I wanted, so I had no regret. But let me tell you something, in case you ever date one of me again. The rules are simple. What I do, no matter how it might contradict what I say, is none of your business. It's kind of like with the law. If you go through my belongings and you steal a videotape of me murdering the next door neighbor, and you take that to court, and you obtained it illegally, well, honey, it don't count. You had no business taking that video. Same thing goes with my private life.
Who cares if I told you there's nobody else? I tell that to everybody. It gives me what I want. You had no right to check up on it, as I've told you 1,000 times before. So you have, again, nobody to blame but yourself. Mind your own business. We would have been happy forever if you would have just kept your nose out of my business. What is it with you? Can't I have fun? Ugh!
I know that shortly after I dumped you, I told you I'd changed my mind. After, of course, trying to get you to marry me back then, I told you I wasn't interested in any kind of relationships anymore. I was just too hurt about how much you hurt me, even though I lied to you from day one, but that didn't count. I had every right to do that. You screamed at me, of course, when you found out I was lying and cheating, but that doesn't count. You should never yell at someone like me, no matter what I do.
I knew it was a small world. I didn't realize it was that small. You happened to be on the same dating application that I was on, and you gave me such a hard time because I had just told you I didn't want a relationship anymore. Yet here I was, my beautiful face on the screen, and it said, interested in relationship. It also said interested in group sex. No strings attached, but that doesn't matter. You tried to focus on that relationship and say you wanted to make it work again with me. I said I didn't want a relationship, and of course you were giving me a hard time, asking me why did it say that, and I just made up a story. Well, I just clicked on this and clicked on that. Never mind, I clicked on the things I wanted, because after all, I didn't click that I was a man, did I? No. I didn't click that I was ugly, did I? No. But you didn't need to know that. That's none of your business. I just wish you would stop chasing me and stalking me.